All right, on to my most anticipated part in this series. And that is, of course, my top tier movies in the last 6 months. These are the movies that I rated as low as a 4, some 4.5s in there, and as well as, I believe, one at least 5 star. These are the movies that I have liked the most, enjoyed the most in 2025 thus far. And to start us off on this tier, we'll be talking about Nosferatu from 2024. A gothic tale of obsession between a haunted young woman and the terrifying vampire infatuated with her, causing untold horror in its wake. I had initially really wanted to see this one in theaters. I haven't seen too many Robert Eggers movies. I did see The Witch when it came out, and I really enjoyed that one. But unfortunately, I just missed it. I'm not sure entirely why. So it took me a while to be able to watch this one. And while I was looking forward to it, this typically isn't my type of genre. I talked about it, I believe, in my Sinners review. I tend to not love the historical, sort of like period focused horror movies. I'm not a huge like creature person either. So the combination of vampire plus like old timey vibe, it just tends not to really be my thing. But I did really enjoy this one, and I think the main reason was how much attention to detail and how much like love and care and effort was put into it. This movie was beautiful in so many ways. The costumes, the scenery, and even the acting, like everyone took this really seriously, and I think that made for a very entertaining and like well put together movie. I think it ended up a little bit lower on this tier just because, potentially because it's not my typical type of movie, but also I feel like certain aspects of it, maybe the storytelling, just was a little bit less intriguing than just like the general visuals and like feeling of the movie. There were just certain like character dynamics that I didn't really care for. But overall, this is one I would definitely recommend, especially for people who maybe like the kind of like tragic. I almost said love story, but I don't feel like this one is really heavily focused on the romance. So it definitely, if you're a vampire fan, if you like Robert Eggers' style of like these big, bombastic, loud, intense, beautiful movies, definitely one to check out. Next up is Slaughter High from 1986. 8 people are invited to their alma mater for their 10-year reunion where a fellow former student, disfigured from a prank gone wrong, is out to seek revenge. I'm honestly surprised I ranked this one so high. Not because I didn't like it, but just I don't know if it's very well regarded as far as like 80s slashers go. I just had a really good time with it. I really liked the setting. It's like set in an abandoned kind of like school building, and so there's lots of like rooms and spaces. And so that definitely was a win for me. I also found some of the visuals to be very unsettling. Um, and it was also just like the score of this movie is the wackiest, like super 80s music. And it just made for this like very strange experience. But I had a really good time watching this one. So it's rated higher than a lot of like the slashers that I watched in my sort of like exploration that I've been doing recently. But I would definitely recommend this one as just kind of like a fun uh, slasher watch for you and the homies. Like if you have people over and you want to watch something goofy that's not like super heavy, this one is just a lot of fun. And I think that honestly is why I rated it so high. I enjoyed how wacky it was. There's some good kills in it. There's some really dumb horror movie logic that's just kind of fun to chuckle at. So I guess that makes sense that I rated it this high. If I was going to do a separate category of ranking the movies that surprised me the most from this year, this one would definitely be up there. And that is Peeping Tom from 1960. A young man murders women using a movie camera to film their dying expressions of terror. And so this is definitely the oldest movie I've watched this year. I don't mean to be a hater, but I tend to I skew more modern with the movies that I watch. And I'm slowly learning that that's a silly thing to do because I have just grown so fond of the art style and just like the general vibe of older horror. But yeah, I've been like really skewed for most of the time that I've been watching horror movies. So this movie, I went in with pretty low expectations. I was challenging myself. And I walked out with maybe one of my new favorites. I liked this movie so much. And I think part of that is it has a lot of heart. It was surprisingly more emotional than I had sort of anticipated. You kind of become sort of emotionally connected to certain characters. It's visually really beautiful. There's some really cool visual effects. Um, and it's just a really effective movie. I think, it's one of those that is kind of like a proto slasher, right? Like it kind of started this like longer chain of movies sort of inspired by the premise. All right, so zipping straight back to the modern era. Next is Anything for Jackson from 2022. A bereaved Satanist couple kidnaps a pregnant woman so they can use an ancient spellbook to put their dead grandson's spirit into her unborn child, but end up summoning more than they bargained for. And I didn't realize it when I put it in there, but that sounds like shockingly similar to the premise of Bring Her Back, which is kind of interesting. This is a movie that I had not heard of. It totally slipped under my radar. I don't know if I was like really paying attention to horror releases in 2020, but I had never heard of this. It was something that I found on a Reddit thread, I believe, and I was really glad to have seen this one. There was a lot that I really liked about it. It's a good blend of kind of like silly. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but it also has some of the most like frightening visuals that I've seen in a movie maybe this year. There were just some things that were done that were very unique and very, very like visually intriguing. And so I had a lot of fun with this one. It also had a lot of heart. This sort of central premise is about a pregnant woman and a grieving couple, and nobody in this movie is like one way or another, right? Like the characters are very complex, and there's a lot of conversations and like personal sacrifices. It's I think definitely a hidden gem. All right, we're on the last of the 4-star movies. And this one is The Seeding from 2023. A man finds himself trapped in a desert canyon with a woman living off grid who is captive to a pack of sadistic boys. So, one of the things that really drew me to this movie initially is it has one of my favorite horror movie things, which is single location. So, outside of like the initial kind of like getting to the main setting, it's just these two people in this big hole in the middle of the desert. And then you have like this pack of boys kind of like roaming around the perimeters of the hole. And that alone was enough to really pull me into this one. And so it's just this kind of like slow burn unfolding mystery about the woman that lives there, about the boys that surround it, like how the man ended up there, why he's there, kind of watching him try to escape. It just has a very particular tension that holds throughout the movie. And even though it is kind of slow, I really just enjoyed the vibe of it and the setting. And there was just a lot of really cool things that they did with the setting that made this like a fun and unique watch for me. This might be a mild spoiler, but at one point there is a scene where a character is killed and their body is suspended sort of like over the hole. And so the two people wake up in the morning and see this person suspended over the hole. And for some reason that was just like so visually like sinister, but also like really neat. It was just like a cool use of the setting. So I really just appreciated a lot of like the little details of this movie. And it's one that I definitely recommend if you don't mind something that's like a little more slow, and kind of like unfolds throughout the watch. All right, first up on the 4.5s is Black Christmas from 1974. During their Christmas break, a group of sorority girls are stalked by a stranger. And so, again, this is my year of watching horror movies from different decades, so I'm just going to be ranting about this. But I was sort of under the impression, and I might get some hate for this, that movies from certain decades aren't able to scare me in the same way that more recent movies do. And I sort of just attributed this to like the state of visual effects at the time, maybe a little bit of film ignorance. I apologize. I'm trying, I'm learning, I'm growing. Um, but this movie also really surprised me because it genuinely scared me. And specifically, the phone calls in this movie. If you've heard about this movie or you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. But part of like the big appeal of it is these phone calls that the girls are getting, and the sounds and the way that this person speaks on the phone is some of the most like deeply unsettling like audio effects that I've maybe ever heard. It was so disturbing just listening to the way that this person speaks on the phone. And then later in the movie, when the central characters are kind of interacting with the killer, um, it's frightening. I don't know. I was like really, again, just like pleasantly surprised by how unsettling and how effective this movie was for me. All right, next up, and this might be a little bit of, I don't know if I consider cheating on my own video, but this was a rewatch. This is a movie that I've seen already and rewatched this year, and that is Terrifier 3. Art the Clown is set to unleash chaos on the unsuspecting residents of Miles County as they peacefully drift off to sleep on Christmas Eve. So, the reason that I watched this again was that I had seen it in theaters last year, and then I really wanted my fiance to watch all three of the Terrifier movies. So, we watched 1 and 2, and then we watched this one most recently. I'll probably do like a longer form video on the Terrifier movies, maybe when 4 comes out, whenever that might be. I genuinely love them. I think my ranking would probably be like 1, 3, 2. Um, I really liked 3. I saw it in theaters. I had a good time with it. I think it really capitalizes on David Howard Thornton's effectiveness as Art the Clown. This movie is silly, it is over the top, it's gross, but I love it. It has a special place in my heart, and I think this one is the one where Damien Leone kind of like hit his stride. It does tend to veer into the like lore maybe a little more. That was my fiance's issue with it, is that it's very lore heavy, which is true. But it's fun, and I think there's a lot of really great homages to 80s and 70s slashers, which I know now because I've been watching a lot of them. This is just such a good movie. I love it. I am a Terrifier defender. I love it. So we'll just leave it at that. Alrighty. And the final movie, and my only 5-star from this year, and that is The Ugly Stepsister from 2025. Follow Elvira as she battles against her gorgeous stepsister in a realm where beauty reigns supreme. This movie is Norwegian, and I believe that synopsis might have been translated, but you get the idea. This is kind of like a dark and twisted take on the Cinderella story. And let me tell you that I loved this movie. This movie had so many things that I look for in a horror movie. It is directed by a woman, which is really cool. It's her directorial debut, and I look forward to seeing other things that she does. This is kind of like a body horror movie. I think it would fit really excellent into my Gross Girls movie, which, if you haven't seen that list of recommendations, you can find it here. Um, it is such a gross movie, but in such a fun way. It does something that I absolutely love, and that is like pairing like femininity and like the color pink and cakes and flowers with just like this absolutely like brutal, disgusting body horror, and it is such a fun mixture. This movie is gross, but it's also emotional and fun and funny. I don't think it's something that I would recommend to everyone because there are some parts that are just like very difficult to watch. Things that I think there's a little bit for everyone, like something that you wouldn't really necessarily want done to your body. It's I wouldn't say it's a tough watch because the tone is not super dark. It isn't at times, but overall it has this kind of like goofy sort of like fairy tale vibe while you're having these like really gross and like disturbing situations kind of play out. Um, so yeah, definitely not everyone's cup of tea, but this is all I want. This has all the things I want out of a horror movie. And I'm so glad that it has gotten a lot of recognition. I've seen it on a lot of platforms, people talking about it. I was able to vote for it in a bunch of different categories for Fangoria's Chainsaw Award, so I'm hoping that it gets some further recognition that way. Um, but if you have a strong stomach and the premise sounds like something that you would be interested in, highly recommend. I really love this movie, and I think it's definitely a contender for like my top five of this year. I do have some other five-star movies that are mentioned in individual reviews that I saw in theaters, but this one is definitely up there. It's just it's unique. It's not something that I feel like I've seen before. So that concludes all of the movies, aside from some special ones that I'll be talking about later in different videos. That's all the ones that I've seen this first 6 months of the year. I'm looking forward to seeing what else I'm able to watch in the next 6 months. There's just so many good movies out there, and I feel like expanding into different decades has really opened up this new like, and I'm sure there's so many people watching this who are scoffing at it, but I'm on the journey. So if you have recommendations for really anything, but specifically for movies in the 70s and 80s, doesn't necessarily have to be slashers, but I love those as well. So thank you all for tuning in to the top tier, my favorite movies that I've seen so far in 2025. And please, as always, like and subscribe. You can follow me on Letterboxd, Instagram, TikTok, and engage with me on all those platforms. I appreciate it so much. Thanks, guys.